All right, so this sneaker right here, the Nike Adapt BB, was a really cool sneaker. I mean, I think it was Nike's first performance auto lacing sneaker ever. It was certainly their first basketball auto lacing sneaker. And if you were willing to shell out $350, which is a lot, but if you were willing to do that, I do think it was kind of worth the money because it was the first of its kind. You put it on, you felt like you were stepping into the future. It was a really cool user experience and it performed well enough on the court to again make that $350 price tag seem somewhat reasonable. But now in this box, I have not seen this, I have not opened it up yet. These are the Nike Adapt BB2 version 2.0 from the year 2020, but I've already tried it now. So with the second Adapts, will it still give me that wow factor? That is why I wanted to unbox these with you guys live on camera, but we will be going to the gym a little bit later in the video to see what I think about these as my first impressions performance-wise. But first, we gotta unbox them and see what they're all about.
I can't lose, I got high top shoes on. Heard he on the news, yeah, he telling on his crew. What up? I screw him like a screw. Hit my content, I'm smoking exotic, ooh. Leave your contact, I hit your phone. We gon' chalk it, yeah, we leaving bones. I can't lose, I got high top shoes on. Heard he on the news, yeah, he telling on his crew. What up? I screw him like a screw. Catch my contact, I'm smoking exotic, ooh. Leave your contact, I hit your phone. We gon' chalk it, yeah, we leaving bones.
All right, first up, get this little Nike box, probably some hardware in here. Yep, charging cable as well as a brick. This is what the box looks like inside if you guys are curious about it. Nothing too special, but here they are, the Nike Adapt BB2s. Wow, these look a lot bigger than the first Adapts. And of course, now this is one thing that I was curious about because with the first Adapts, obviously you needed some hardware. Did they change anything to the charging mat? It does not look like they changed anything. It is the same charging mat that came with the first Adapt. In fact, if you look on the back here, it says Nike Adapt Charger 1.0. So this is the first gen. They didn't change anything about this. Not that they needed to change anything about it, but I mean, come on, if you're gonna charge us $50 more, I mean, it's the same exact charging mat, but whatever. It's not that great quality either. As you can see, my initial pair my initial charging mat kind of got scuffed up or whatever. It's a fingerprint magnet, but you know, it is what it is. Let's check out the sneakers. All right, so the first thing that is really popping out to me is obviously this shroud kind of covering the whole front of the shoe. It is not like the materials that you find on the first Adapt. The first Adapts do have this slight plastic coating over the cross of it, which makes it just a little bit coarse, but it's still soft. It still feels like a knitted fly knit material. It still feels like a sock, albeit with just a slight plastic coating for some protection and durability. These, on the other hand, feel a lot more like a Fuse, but they're a little bit softer than a Fuse. It's thin, but it has a lot more of that plasticky feeling on there. I don't know if you guys can pick this up on the camera, but it just has a cheaper feel in my opinion. But again, this is just, you know, the initial first impressions. It could break in, it could get softer over time, but right out of the box, I actually prefer the materials on the first Adapts, just looking at it right here as a first impressions. And I think the Adapt BB2 is a step up visually from the first Adapts in pretty much every facet. You have this really cool swoosh going across the midfoot. The shroud, like I said, the material is just not as soft, but I do think it gives it a cool look. You have a huge exposed 3M tongue, which you guys know me, I love 3M. Black, red, gray, those are like my three favorite colors, guys. You guys know that. Overall, I mean, look, this is a $400 sneaker. If you haven't tried the first Adapts, I think you should pick these up because it is a crazy experience. It is a bummer that it's 50 bucks more, but this is a crazy experience, guys. It's not as exciting for me because again, I had the first ones, but it is a really cool, it's like VR. When you step into VR, you're pretty much shocked every time you put it on. You're just going to the future. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But now what I wanna do is I wanna hoop in these just for a little bit to see how they perform on the court. And then we're gonna come back to the studio and I'm gonna give you guys my first impression. So let's hit the gym. All right, so we're back from the gym and I was able to hoop in these for about 3 to 4 hours. So I think I have a pretty good understanding of how these perform on the court. However, just keep in mind that these are not my final thoughts on these performance-wise. They're just kind of my first impressions. But again, I did get to playing these and there's some things here that I really like, but there's one change that Nike made on these that it actually kind of bothers me. I'm not really too sure why Nike did this. But let's just start out with the positives first. The cushion is absolutely awesome in these. It's Zoom Turbo, which isn't the most elite setup that Nike has to offer, but the way it's implemented here, especially compared to the first Adapts, which just had Cushlon, this Zoom Turbo unit in the forefoot is just exponentially better than what was on its predecessor. It was bouncy, it was responsive, and I had a lot of time hopping around the floor. I felt faster, I felt more explosive. It's really good stuff here. So that Zoom Turbo unit is definitely a plus in my opinion. But what really helps out the overall cushion of the Adapt BB2 is Nike changed the midsole stack height in this model. And midsole stack height is basically the material between your foot and the ground. And if you take a look at the heel of the second Adapts, it sits a lot lower than the first one. And this is a slight change that really helps out the overall cushion. I mean, from back to front, you sit a lot closer to the ground. And what that allows you to do is have a smoother heel to toe transition. And it also just adds more pop because I feel like you're allowed to get more leverage on the forefoot. And that really helps activate that Zoom Turbo unit in the front of the shoe. So overall, changing the midsole stack height is an awesome change that I think Nike absolutely killed. But another change that I really like on these second Adapts is the exposed tongue. Now on the first Adapts, I felt like the collar area had a lot of problems with them. I just thought the fit was too loose in this area. But with this exposed tongue, not only is it easier to get in and out of the shoe, but it really helps that adaptive lacing system lock into your ankle much better than its predecessor. But the heel cup also does wonders for the lockdown in this area. It's a much beefier external heel cup this time around, and it just locks your foot into place much better than the first Adapt. So overall, the fit in the collar area is an improvement from the first Adapts, but the rest of the fit is pretty much identical. The forefoot and the midfoot, I didn't notice too many changes from the first Adapts. But again, I just want to say with this adaptive lacing system, it is going to come down to personal preference. It's not going to be for everyone. But for myself, I enjoyed the experience with the fit, and I also went true to size, so that would be my recommendation for you as well. All right, so now let's move on to the negatives of this shoe. And in reality, there's like 2 negatives, maybe 1.5, but one of them really upsets me actually, and that would be the materials. Now, I know when I unboxed this shoe, I said that I like the materials on the first Adapts over the second one, and playing in this shoe, it just further confirms my feelings about these materials. Now, Nike calls this a ballistic mesh upper, which ironically is the exact same name as what Jordan calls the materials on the Jordan 11s. But make no mistake, this upper is not identical to what you could find on the Jordan 11. In fact, I think this material quality is a lot worse than what you can find on the Jordan 11. And also, this ballistic mesh upper is just not worth the $50 price increase that Nike put on these. I mean, the Flyknit upper on the first Adapt was way more premium, way softer, way more comfortable. In fact, when I first started playing in these, the top of my foot, the material, actually I could feel it kind of flexing and buckling against my foot. And it wasn't painful, but it was distracting. However, after 10 minutes of play, that buckling kind of disappeared, but it did make me think that maybe some people, this buckling with their unique foot shape might be more apparent to them, or it might be not apparent at all. But I did think it was worth mentioning that I could feel these materials buckling against my foot, when in the first adapt, it was so soft that flying it upper, it felt like a sock. This is not a sock. If you look at the upper, it kind of reminds me of a screen door. It's not identical to a screen door, but it still has that rubbery, plasticky, screen scratchy type feel to it in terms of texture. So overall, with the $50 price increase, I do not know why Nike thought they could get away with this. In my opinion, the materials are a huge disappointment, but objectively, they're not painful and they're not horrible, but when you factor in that price increase, it is kind of confusing. Another thing that was kind of underwhelming with these adapts was the traction. Now, like I said earlier, the traction on the first adapt was easily its best feature, but on the second one, I don't know if I had too high expectations or if the floor I was playing on was awful, because the floor I was playing on is notoriously bad, but I just found myself wiping the outsole of the second adapts a lot more than I did with the first ones. And I just felt like the traction was just not on par with what I remember the first adapts having. So far, it is too early to tell, but so far, the traction has been kind of underwhelming. I do want to take it on some other floors and see how they perform, but I did play on 2 floors. One was clean, one was dirty, and my overall conclusion was the traction is not as good as the first adapt. So that does have me worried. However, it is too early to say for sure. So look, overall, the Adapt BB2 is a specialty sneaker. I don't think everyone should go out and spend $400 on these. But the real interesting question is, if you had the first adapts, is it worth spending another $400 to get the second ones? And that's something that I'm gonna need a little bit more time to kind of answer, because I am gonna do an in-depth performance review on these. But if you're just asking me right now, it is an interesting question because the second adapts do have a much improved cushion setup, and it's just a smoother sneaker in general, but the materials and the traction, they are kind of letting me down so far, and the fit is kind of identical to the first one with maybe some incremental improvements. So are they worth the $50 more than the first adapts, and should you pick these up if you have the first ones in your collection already? I think the answer may be a little bit surprising, but again, I'm not too sure. I don't want to give my final answer so far. So if you want the answer to that question and you want to see the full in-depth performance review on these in the coming weeks, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss that video. And if you enjoyed this one, smash that like button. It helps us out a lot. Again, stay tuned for the full performance review. My name's Jaron. It's been great having you. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.